Today's theme of the Town Hall is Accounting for Good. So first, let us put our hands together to welcome Mr. Jared E., Chairman of Charity Council, on stage to deliver the welcome address. Mr. E., please.
Commissioner, distinguished speakers, panelists, fellow members of the Charity Council, ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed a very warm morning, so warm welcome. I think something to do with the humidity. Okay, I won't promote. Someone just shared with me about a particular brand of vest that can keep you cool. So I'm taking note. I'm going to buy one afterwards. Well, good morning, and thanks for taking time to be with us on this 5th Town Hall meeting, jointly organized by the Charities Council, NUS Center for Social Development, Asia, CSDA for short, Institute of Singapore Chartered Accountants, ISCA, and the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, CIMA. The theme of this Town Hall meeting is Accounting for Good, which is also the title of the e-book publication that will be launched today. This publication is a joint effort by ISCA and CSDA, written as a call for accountants to understand the charity landscape with the objective of volunteering their time, skills, and experiences more effectively. I would like to commend this collaborative effort, and actually a lot more can be achieved if we begin to collaborate rather than everyone trying to reinvent or try to create their own. And this collaboration has led to a very meaningful product, and to thank the distinguished speakers and panelists who have joined us today to further enhance our understanding of how charities and accountants can work together. Charities must first self-evaluate and identify the needs and gaps that require expert help that the particular organization needs. The trouble is, at charities, we're also busy doing the frontline service, and we don't pause to reflect what is it that we need. And we tend to neglect the back end and the support services. And we ask for help, but we don't know what is it that we want. And volunteers comes in and also cannot figure out exactly what is it that you want of them. So you get a mismatch, and usually the experience don't turn out well. So you need to have a self-evaluation. And when you know it, then it's easier to have a match with your volunteers specifically. Is it risk management? Is it that you have grown in such a way you need help to set up a HR system because you have a growing number of staff joining you, especially those in the healthcare sector? It is really important to match volunteers with the right skills and knowledge to the right project. And this also applies to your formation of the board itself. Don't appoint to your board just someone that you know, but point to the board someone that has the skill sets and knowledge that you need, because that will augur better for the organization. Sometimes the matching involves the help of intermediary organizations to connect individuals or companies with charities. Charities who need accounting support can approach NVPC to leverage on their board match services. NVPC works closely with ISCA Cares to match the volunteer accountants to needs in this sector. ISCA Cares, which was set up during the Jubilee year, provides a platform for the profession to support worthy and meaningful causes. Accountants who are keen on volunteering their services can indicate their interest with ISCA Cares. Charities should not shy away from accepting help from accountants or accounting firms who may not have worked with you previously. We tend to rely on familiarity, but really go for depending on your needs and the skill sets that you want. Really, these accounting volunteers can contribute expertise and skill sets that are key in building the governance backbone of the organization. Some of these areas include the management of reserves and investments, cost accounting, and that's very important, especially for those of you who are dependent on government subvention. It is always a difficult task if you don't have it done properly to convince the ministry that your cost structure is what you claim it to be. Risk management, and internal audit. With the recent launch of the refined code of governance, such expertise becomes all the more important to enable charities in their implementation of the new requirements. Hence, the time taken to build a relationship and mutual trust is really, really worth investing. To support charities in the implementation process, Charities Council, together with partnering agencies, will be rolling out a series of learning sessions. Sample guides and templates will also be developed and shared. It's useful, although I myself sometimes are quite nervous about issuing out sample guides and templates. There's a temptation for charities to take shortcut and copy and paste into the templates and make it fit, even though it doesn't quite. So do attend the learning sessions and do apply it meaningfully. I encourage all charities to take steps and time to prepare and make the necessary adjustments. The new reporting requirements will apply for financial years commencing from 1st January 2018. So there's still time, but the clock seems to be ticking faster and faster, so don't wait too late. Let me now speak to the accountants in the room, and there are quite a few here. While charities and corporates share many similarities, there are complexities and differences between both. When volunteering, it is important for accountants to invest sufficient time to understand the context in which the charity operates, as well as the challenges that it faces. In this way, we can help to bring to the table best practices which we are familiar with in the corporate world, but adapted to become practical solutions for charities. I urge accounting firms to encourage your staff to start volunteering if they have not yet started. There are personal and organizational benefits in doing so. Volunteering brings about opportunities for staff development, improvements in employee engagement, and helps to build up a positive public image of the firm. The corporate sector is also increasingly moving towards measuring the success of an organization by its community giving strategy and impact. You know, even the banking sector, I'm most familiar with Hong Kong Chai Bank Corporation, and they've been doing this for many, many years. And they just don't do it automatically, they review it. So they move from just collecting money and handing out money into directly involving themselves and their staff into projects like makeover projects where they make over one rooms for the poor, make over rooms for families that don't have proper study places. And they found that it is very meaningful because their staff who are involved in it develop this sense of compassion, patience, and how to deal with people. And when they go back to the banking sector, as frontline service staff, they're always the star itself. So on behalf of the Town Hall organizers, let me once again thank you for taking time to be here with us. And I really hope this session will be useful and practical in turning a successful partnership between charities and accountants. As you see, there are 4 firms that have their booths here. During the break, please do engage in conversation with them and see how you can collaborate and benefit from the services they offer. We have an exciting lineup of speakers and panelists who will share more in-depth on how to embark on this potential collaboration. And it's my hope that in time to come, skills-based volunteerism will be a norm, skills-based, not just friend type of thing. And the charity, you all laugh because you know it's so familiar, right? And sometimes you wish your board will appoint someone that has some legal background, or appoint someone with some accounting background, or you're going to go into an IT project, you wish they would include a board member that understands it. And I think it's very important. I stress that because you say, oh, it doesn't matter, I just ask for tender and people will come and do the presentation. But just imagine the scenario where none of your board members understand what the presenters or the vendors are saying. How do you choose which is the best offer? what sounds good and what is cheapest. And it's very often the experience becomes painful. So if you do need to invest a lot of money into it, even if it's not a board member, find a volunteer that can really be on your side and help you to provide that sense of assessments and due diligence for you to help you to pick the right vendor. So I wish each and every one of you a very good day, and I hope you have a lot of takeaways from this morning's session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. E, for sharing with us on the importance of skill-based volunteerism. Today, we're also honored to have Mr. Kong In Ton, Vice President, Institute of Singapore Chartered Accountants, for a sharing session on the role of chartered accountants. So without further ado, let us welcome our speaker to deliver his presentation. Mr. Kong, please.
Thank you, Mr. Gerard E, Charity Council Chairman, Dr. Ang Hak Seng, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Accountants appreciate that accountability and transparency are key cornerstones of good governance. They are important components in building trust in organizations, including charities. Since its formation in 2007, the Charity Council has done a commendable job in establishing and enhancing governance standards for the charity sector. It has achieved several milestones in its roadmap, including the establishment of the Charity Transparency Framework, Charity Governance Awards, and the revised Code of Governance for Charities and IPCs. With the Charity Council's continuous efforts towards elevating governance standards in the charity sector, I'm pleased to be here today to share how ISCA and its members, and ISCA as a national accountancy body, as well as the profession as a whole, can contribute to the charity sector. For those of you who are familiar with ISCA, in the last 5 decades, ISCA has worked with governments, various industry sectors, to support the development of the accountancy sector. Today, we are the largest professional body in Singapore with more than 32,000 members. So ISCA members can be found all over the place in many industries, many sectors, many organizations. And we've got a broad range of skills, not limited to accounting or accountancy or internal controls. We've got a good sense of what's right, what's wrong, what's good governance, and so on. And Gerard talked earlier about needs and skill sets, matching the requirement to match needs and skill sets. In short, it's demand and supply. With the accountant's financial expertise and business acumen, together with deep-rooted values of ethics, ethical behavior, integrity, and professionalism, ISCA members are accounting professionals who possess the right skills and knowledge also to make a difference to organizations in the charity sector. This is especially pertinent in today's increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous business environment. Like businesses, charities are facing increasing pressure to adapt to new challenges, especially in the management of public funding. To strengthen donor confidence, charities need to be fully accountable to all its donors with a strong level of corporate governance and financial management. They need to be transparent as to how they use funds. And one thing that is probably underemphasized in the charity sector at the moment is disruption. I know some of you may think that the charity sector and VWOs generally don't face great disruption, but if you do, accountants are well placed to help you because we face disruption all the time. With changes in technology, changes in standards, changes in governance, and so on. We are used to it, and we can bring to bear all these skills in your organization. I understand that sometimes many charities, due to limited resources, are unable to access vital accounting and financial management training. Some larger charities will hire professionals, while others rely on part-time or full-time volunteers. Given that there are about 2,000 charities in Singapore, demand for skills-based volunteers is rapidly growing. Even though the rate of volunteerism has increased over the past years, and as Gerard alludes to, it is still insufficient to meet the demand. ISCA recognizes this need and the role that accountants can play in this sector. Working closely with the Center for Social Development Asia, or CSDA, with the support of the Charity Council and the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, or CIMA. We started a series of articles last year, published in the IS Chartered Accountant Journal, that explores areas where accountants can volunteer their skills and time. As mentioned by Gerard, the articles are now compiled and published in a book for distribution to the accountancy and charity communities. We hope that accountants will find this book useful and be encouraged to start volunteering their expertise in the charity sector. Like many of my fellow accountants present here today, there are ISCA members who are already volunteering their time and services. A role model is Woontek, a partner at RSM Singapore, and Woontek will be sharing more with you the roles that accountants can play in charities. ISCA will want to encourage and is encouraging more accountants to come forward to support and help charities adopt good governance and financial controls. A step that we can take to help grow this concept of skills-based volunteerism is to provide opportunities for accounting professionals to volunteer their skills and expertise to help charities. And this is the reason why ISCA has established our charity arm, ISCA Cares, to provide a platform for the accountancy profession to come together to support worthy and meaningful causes. ISCA Cares supports two charitable causes. One, the current focus is to provide needy youths with access to education in accountancy, and in the pipeline, to harness the skills of the accountancy community to contribute to community development. We will be pleased to share more information with accounting firms and charities once our plans are ready. In the meantime, to help charities have access to accounting firms who wish to volunteer their services, ISCA has made arrangements to have some of these firms with us today to share with you further on their CSR initiatives during the networking lunch. Accountants who are keen to volunteer their services can indicate their interest with ISCA Cares. ISCA Cares will work with the NVPC, the National Volunteer and Philanthropy Center, to match volunteer accountants to the needs of charity organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to share with you, in closing, a quote by Plato: "Happiness springs from doing good and helping others." That's why you see Gerard smiling all the time, right? Gerard is probably one of the biggest role models you can ever hope for. So well done. So we hope accountants today can play a major role in helping charities to do good better. In other words, find more Gerard-ees. And together, this will contribute towards raising governance and management capabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kong, for sharing with us how ISCA can and is contributing to the charity sector. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome our next speaker, Professor Teo Chi Kiang, who will be sharing about the launch of the new ebook, Accounting for Good. Professor Teo is a professor from the Department of Accounting at NUS Business School. He is also one of the co-authors of the book. Professor Teo, please.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. It's good to see you around, such a warm support for the launch of the book. Perhaps I should give a little background to why the book was written. But before that, as protocol, we have to thank all our sponsors and supporters and contributors. We have lots of contributions in writing the book, and we'd like to really thank all of you here who have contributed to the book in one way or another. Most important of all, I think the money came from CIMA, I heard, and we are very happy to acknowledge the contribution, without which our interns would not be paid and our research fellows will not be paid as well. Right? We do it gratis. All right. Yeah. Some of you may also wonder why two professors from the business school are involved in a project done by the social science department. But that's another story. And if you are really interested to know, maybe buy me lunch or dinner, I'll explain the whole details. My co-author are Dr. Isabel Sim and Associate Professor Alfred Loh. Isabel Sim is the main driver in the project. She really drives the whole project very efficiently, sometimes very ruthlessly. We have to stay back and got to discuss this with her. And of course, Alfred is the main thinker behind it. He has done much research into charity, not only in Singapore, but overseas as well. He took especially a year of sabbatical to study charity governance and structures all over the world. So if you've got any questions, please address it to Alfred. I'll be very happy to. I'm sure he's very happy to answer them, right? And of course, I'm given a task to make this presentation. I think that's about the best I can do. Now, one other thing before I mention is that behind the scene, coming out with the content of the book, we have quite a number of interns that really do all the background work and research for us. They did a lot of the first cut writing. They did a lot of gather a lot of the materials for us, and I must acknowledge their contribution to this book as well. So to the many unseen interns in this whole process, thank you very much. Right? I'm not sure some of you may be here, but many of them have graduated and they are working elsewhere. Right? Now, the background to this book, I think it started in the Townhall Meeting. In 2015, it was mentioned that many charities have problems in accounting, and they have lack of talent and skill to do budgeting, cost accounting, and reserve and investment management. And behind this concern is the fact that actually charity arguably depends on trust to function. Without trust, nobody is going to contribute money to you. And if people don't contribute money, you just can't function, right? So one of the important things of building this trust is to make sure that you have a good governance structure in place. And a good governance structure and financial management system means that you need to have basic accounting framework so that at least people, your donors and your contributors, your beneficiaries, and even the government, the public sector who provide subventions to you are pretty confident that whatever money that's given to you are put to good use. Not only reaching the beneficiaries, but at least you are accounting for every cent of the money given to you. Right. So trust is a very important thing. I think Gerard and Ying Tong has mentioned quite a lot of these things, and that makes my work very easy, in the sense that basically behind the motivating force behind this book, the Accounting for Good book, is the fact that we want charities to have a governance structure so that they can build this trust with the people who are contributing, the people who are volunteering the work. I think we meaning that the world itself, has one scandals too many in many charities involved. The background to this book is that actually originally, and that was when I was joined, the understanding was that to write articles for the ISCA journal. We plan to write about 6 or 7 articles to be published in the ISCA journal once every 2 months, so that it can alert accountants to come forward to volunteer. And these were published, but after finishing this job, I thought my job was over. Then they tell me that, oh, you've got to put it into an e-book. Yeah, that's volunteerism, actually. And the person behind it is, of course, Dr. Isabel Sim. She's so convincing. So if any charities wants anything done, you should consult her to get volunteers. So this is the book. And the purpose of this book is really to reach out to accountants, to tell them that there's an area of need, and there's these areas that can be helped by accountants, right? So, but at the same time, as we draft out the articles in this journal, we realized that many of the points would be helpful to the people in the charities itself, the board, and also the management, and also the staff working in the charity. It can provide quite a good guide, at least an introductory guide to the whole process of charity. Now, so we highlight the areas where accountants can volunteer their expertise. I think Gerard and Ying Tong has already mentioned quite a fair bit of these areas. At the end of the day, actually, it's not just having a template or having the skills, but actually having the passion and the calling to make sure that the charities are doing good better. I think that is the catchphrase, doing good better, right? So we hope that this little booklet helps in this process of getting charity to do good better. Oops. So the chapters are in a way self-explanatory. We talk about the regulatory framework, meaning that actually one of the biggest problems that charity encounter is that there's so many codes, so many regulations involved, and sometimes they are not too sure whether they have complied fully or not. So there's a need to have this training to make sure that charities will be able to comply with the key regulations that involve them. Then, of course, I think we also talk about risk management in the book. What are the risks faced by charities? Cash flow, one of them, that involves fundraising, which is beyond the scope of this book. We talk about internal controls and compliance with regulations as well. And then, sorry. And then we have a chapter on full cost accounting. I think many times charities do not know what are the costs in delivering their services. They do not really know the full cost. So when they tell people that, well, it costs so much to reach out to a particular beneficiary, they exclude a lot of overheads. And because of that, people got the wrong impression that, well, if I contribute, say, $10, that will cover it. But they forgot that, or the charities forgot that actually, in addition to the $10, there's another $5 involved in making sure that you have a good HR system, a good IT system. You have to have an audit to be done annually. You know, these are costs, and a full cost system will help to address all this. And sometimes, on occasions, you may find that the availability of full costs may cause the charity to sit back and tell them that, well, it's not worth doing this particular activity or this program anymore. It could be much better if I channel it to another series of activities to do work for the public. We got some mentioned about cash flow management and reserves and investment management. So to the accountants over in this audience, we have indicate to you these are some of the key areas. I put it into this chart here. These are some of the obvious areas, but it's not as exclusive and it's not exhaustive, right? So you could help in some of these specific areas where your skills are there, right? So one of big areas is always compliance with legal requirements and accounting standards to make sure that at least basic governance processes are being complied with. So what's next? I thought that was the end. Then Isabel says that, well, there's some more. So when we finished publishing these 6 articles, she came up with this idea that, well, we need to publish a thought leadership book. That means we discuss issues in the area of charities, governance, and financial management. And we are now starting to work on it. There'll be a handbook to guide people, much more detailed than what is in this particular Accounting for a Good book. And then hopefully the book will be launched in 2019 in a conference like this. So thank you very much. I think this is all about the book, and I give you more than necessary, but actually the details are all found in Gerard's and Ying Tong's speech. Right. Thank you very much.
Next, we're honored to have with us Mr. Tae Woon Tek, who will be sharing about the role of accountants in charities and some of the potential problems that charities might face. Mr. Tay is a partner at RSM Singapore. Mr. Tay, please.
Good morning, distinguished guests. I'm going to start off by asking and do a quick survey. How many of you see your accountants as auditors and you don't like to see me? You see, many of you wouldn't like to see auditors. Why? Because you find that we are a pain. We come and ask you a lot of questions. And we don't trust your people, your system. Right? A lot of you nod your head. And then when I ask my auditors, they find that the charity sectors are too trusting. So today I want to demystify this. We are actually very kind-hearted people also. We are also very trusting. We are not trying to be difficult, but we are trained in this accounting principle called professional skepticism. When we exercise professional skepticism, please don't think that we don't trust you. All right? We are actually looking for facts and evidence. All right? So please love your auditors. Now, I'm going to tell you another thing, that is, we also, and we know this, we have very overzealous auditors that make your life very difficult. Young. They apply the rule book, right, to the dot. They are very inflexible. They didn't want to listen to you. We also recognize young people are like this, right? We are once young, right? And we are trained, our young people are trained to be very obedient, right? So you've got to understand the product of our system. So you've got to be very patient with the young auditors and, guide them and explain. And if you're getting to nowhere, call people like us. And sometimes I find that when I reach out to my clients who are in the charity sectors, and I say I want to see them, the first thing that the charity sectors ask is, why wouldn't they want to see me? Is there something very wrong? Because he's a managing director, why he wants to see me? And I think this is the part where I hope the charity sectors see auditors differently. When someone like me wants to see you, I do care. We are not here trying to make life difficult. We're here trying to understand more, and we're here trying to find practical solutions, practical ways of helping you, right? Especially in the compliance course and the compliance program. So I hope with this startup, you will start to learn how to work with your auditors, right? That's one part that I hope I want to address today. Auditors are meant to guide and help you. They are not meant to add work to you. They will have findings, and findings, if it is factual, may not be pleasant, but we all learn together. We are not perfect. We want to work together to be better. Now, if with this, then we will know how to work together and make charity governance, right, standards high. Okay? Now, I'm going to quickly talk about this charities code, the refinement. Right? I just got this hard copy. A lot of you think that this must be another product from the accountants telling me I've got to do risk management, strategy, more work, right, and more money for accounting firms like RSM. Many of you laugh. Actually, it's not meant to be like that. And clearly, I know of many unsung heroes, many selfless accountants who came forward to make sure that we don't have a set of code that is cumbersome and make life difficult for the charities. So, and these are selfless contribution for many accountants who do this without any motive. Their only motive is to make sure that our charities, all right, do well, do more good, at the same time, don't erode the trust, the public trust in our charity sectors, right? And seriously, I want to thank all these accountants, plenty of them. Some of you are here for all your contribution to the refinement to this code, right? Now, one of the key refinement, you will see that anything that is less than 50,000 now, you don't need the GEC submission, right? Some of the accountants are pushing for higher limits, but we've got to find a balance, right? But it doesn't mean that those that are less than 50,000, you don't care about governance. I think the whole concept here is when your receipts are less than 50,000, it is easier to practice governance, and it's easier to practice governance from the spirit of and the principles of what this code is trying to say. Because if you do that, you get more support, you get more trust, and you have more contributions coming in, you have more resources to further your good cause, right? The second part where I think accountants, and many accountants are, I think the second part, and maybe ISCA can look into this, and together with CNPL, there is a need to bring in more professionals, be it accountants, lawyers, engineers, or anybody, to come and sit on the board, right? Winifred is a good friend of mine. They have a board matching. You will hear about that, right? To find more people, the right type of people, to come and sit on the board. And this we all recognize that it is also a capacity issue. How do we bring more people to be willing to volunteer their time on the boards? I think already in the accounting sector, we are encouraging more accountants, and I'm very encouraged to see many retired accountants volunteering their time as board members in the charity sectors, right? And I think we can do a lot more together with the charities, right, to bring more awareness. And the key is matching the right people to the right charities. And you know, this would require charities to talk more about their mission, what they're trying to do, and when you can articulate your visions, what you're trying to do, what you're looking for, then you know those who wants to volunteer know where to find you, right? I think there is still this gap here where more can be done to find the right people to join your board. And this is critical, and this is important for board renewal, right? And certainly when this was put, it is never intended to say that the experience of the founders or the current people are not valued. They are valued, they are very important. But as we grow and as you age, you need renewal, you need more people to come in to help, right? So if we put it in the right context, I think, you know, this refinement is more progressive to bring the charity sector forward. Strategic planning as a priority, you will see that this becomes important. A lot of charities that we work with thinks that, hey, I'm a charity, I'm doing good. There's no need to think about strategy. Why make the charity so complicated, right? But the reality today is it's not about the complication, it's the complexity of the environment you deal with. You may say that you have many volunteers, but volunteers itself, how to organize them, how to bring them together, to work together, is important, right? And how do you find relevance in furthering your mission and do more good to help the targeted beneficiaries? These are work that cannot be done on an ad hoc basis. It needs to be organized. It needs to be planned. You need to strategize. You need to bring the resources in. So when the charity unit put up this, the idea here is to get more charities to seek help, to embrace strategic planning when you think about the kind of activities, the kind of programs you want to do over the next 3 to 5 years. And I think this is an area where many accountants can help and volunteer, and I'm sure, right, you will benefit from the inputs from these experienced accountants in helping shape, all right, your strategy, okay? Risk management. Again, the common thing is charity is very simple. Why need to have risk management? Now, we also think like that until we realize that the things that the charities they deal with today maybe handling medicine, handling food, right? And moving people from one location to another location, holding external events, right? Now, then we ask the question, what if the wrong medicine is given? What happened? Have you considered evacuation plan when rains, thunder, right? What if there's a fire breakout? Then, the first thing people will talk to me is, you always think about the bad. But the bad does happen. Changi Airport Terminal 2 has what? Fire. Is it possible? It is possible, right? And the bad just happened, right? How many of you are hit by ransomware? And I'm worried when I saw this, because many of our charity sectors are still using XP. But the good thing there is their XP are not connected to the net. Which is good, all right? Sometimes no need to be so advanced, right? Yeah, as long as your XP are not connected to the net, it's all offline, it's very safe. We are not asking you, please, to upgrade to the more expensive window, right? Just make sure that you stay offline. All right. So these are things that I think we are not trying to add more rules, do more documentation. It's just to bring a certain level of awareness to the programs. And the last thing we want is charities are hurt because in the context of doing good, serving all this packed rice to the poor, you have one whole block of poor people who took your rice and all outside for 3 days. Then what happened, right? So, so I think if you start to think about the operational risks that charities can face, then you realize that, why there is a need to consider this. It is definitely not something the accountants dream of or the accounting firm dream of to make more money for ourselves. No, we don't need this, seriously. But I think we need to think about that. And you actually don't need to pay accounting firms like me to do this. There is a chapter 4 on risk management, and you really want to have a chat, let's sit down and have a chat. Make something practical, simple, all right? The idea here is coming together to have a robust discussion of what can go wrong. And finding time to do that is important, rather than drawing up a comfortable risk heat map, say I'm covered. I think the documentation is important, but the critical part in risk management is sitting down and have a discussion, all right, and look at how to manage contingencies, and that's critical, right? Now, I wouldn't say problems faced by charity. I think these are all well-known areas, and I think chapter 6 of this book talk about reserve management, right? We deal with succession planning. We also look at budget and resource constraint. Now, and this is where CIMA comes in, right? Because there's this whole thing about cost accounting, budgetary control, how to plan and how to make sure that with the limited resources, you can maximize the benefit. So this is where I think the accountants can play a role in putting up a budget and in monitoring how the budget is used. And again, when you start to do this, there will obviously be initial resistance, right? Why I have to account for every single cent? Some of the charities come and talk to me and say, why so difficult? Why have to account for? Why have to explain budget variance? We are doing good. You mean you don't know I'm doing good? Why you must explain budget variance? Right? I think the whole concept here has to be a constructive discussion where we are looking at how to improve, right? It's not about asking you to explain the past, but it's asking you to learn from what we've gone through and how we can improve better in the use of the public money, right? Imagine if every charity stretch their dollar and can be the $1 can become $5 worth of value or $10 worth of value. More and more people is going to be benefit from that dollar. Right? So I think if you have this concept and working with the accountants to put a budgetary control in place, is a good discipline, right? I realize that even as an accountant, right? Sometimes I used to keep a simple, with all these gadgets, simple tracking of how I spend my money, right? And I think I become more disciplined on how I use the money. But the moment I relax, I don't bother, two things happen, all right? I overspend. Second thing, my waistline increased. Then I have to end up paying the doctors, all right, to bring down my weight. So if you think about budget control and why there's a discipline to monitor, you realize actually it can make you healthier, leaner, and stretch the dollar to do a lot more good for the beneficiaries, right? Now, this is a survey, and I just checked the MCCY website. The national volunteerism rate, although has improved, is about 34%, is still quite low. And I think this is an area where more can be done. And I think in the accounting sector, there are small minorities of young accountants that I know of quit the Big Four and join the charity sectors. Right? These are good development. And here we are talking about skill-based volunteerism. And I hope this town hall today will actually encourage more skill-based volunteerism from the young accountants here. If you don't know where to volunteer, there are many avenues, right? Winifred, I think, has a program that is targeting the young accountants, right, the young professionals to come and volunteer without having to need to take on the responsibility of board members. They will prepare you eventually to do the board membership. And I'm sure ISCA Care, right, has again a volunteerism program to let you participate. And accounting firms like us also embrace this volunteerism. We bring the young accountants to a home during the Chinese New Year, and we actually have great fun together, singing Hokkien songs, singing songs with the people. And it's a good way to know how to care in making our society more gracious, more inclusive. Now, a lot ask me, hey, comply or explain means what? I can don't comply. Is it like that? I think here it's not about strict compliance, because it's about you knowing what should be done and whether you want to fully comply or not fully comply, explain your cause so that people understand, all right? There are certain situations where you can't comply for good reasons, so be it, right? And I think here we are not, and we have always believed that you cannot have something that fit everybody, all right? So there must be some flexibility in allowing the charities to grow together, and improve their governance standards over a period of time. As long as you understand what these principles are, as long as you have this sense to make the incremental improvement, you will be there one day, and hopefully, you know, we will see more charities meeting these charity governance standards, right? Now, so I talked about the previous speaker talked about accountants and the role accountants can play. There are many other things that we can do. For example, project management. Because we are so used to managing a budget, managing project, managing timeline, if you want to get things done, it's good to have accountants coming in to sit down to plan to the details, right? To plan to the details. And sometimes you can be very frustrated when we get too much into the details. And that's where you come in and moderate our side. So that's why we say it is a partnership, right? Risk managers, I talk about risk managers, controller, see the controller in the right sense, all right? And I think the overall thing is the agent of change. And this agent of change is important because you want to make sure that you continue to do good and have more beneficiaries benefiting from your program. And I hope to see whether you see your auditors or accountants in whatever light, eventually you will accept that the auditors or your accountants can be very effective agent of change, right? Where you can partner them to work together to make your charities program more relevant and benefiting a lot more people. And one of the key things that we always believe in is if we can explain the rules, we can explain why things have to be done, why you need to have certain structure and processes, we will get your buy-in, and you know the good of doing it, okay? And you don't have to continue to ask this question. When I put this system and processes, does it mean that I don't trust my people? I think trust has to be earned, all right? When you have this system and processes, it's meant to organize resources efficiently, and it's meant to avoid human lapses. Sometimes innocent human lapses happen. They are not intentional, right? But if it is not treated properly, if the control system are not in place to minimize these human lapses, right, or minimize this omission, it becomes a big thing. And we really want to make sure that we don't blow up small things to become big things, right? So I think in this sense, when you look at how you work with your auditors or your accountants, let's look at how to work together to train your downline to own those controls, to own those processes, and make improvement, right? This change in mindset, I think, is important, and we are far from there. To be very honest, we are far from there. We need closer interaction. We need more understanding. We need critical, constructive feedback on both sides to find a way, all right, to simplify the control, to simplify the risk management processes, to make it practical, to make it easy for your downline people to apply, own it, and improve on it. And what I'm advocating today is not that the auditors are always right or the accountants are always right. I think we need a dialogue, and we need to find a balance in designing effective internal controls. And this is not about us always right all the time, all right? Your input is valuable. You need to challenge what we write, all right? You need to have a dialogue. And when you see senior people going into charities, all right, don't think that you will get a hefty bill. Don't think that something is seriously wrong, all right? It is not like that. We are looking at how to work together, all right, to simplify the processes, to make internal controls more effective. Now, we talk about volunteerism just now, and I think changing the mindset is important. I know getting retired accountants to sit on board is very difficult. They say, hey, liability, right? And some will ask, got buy insurance for me? Right. So I think the whole idea here is, well, I recognize there's a liability issue, there are responsibility issue, all right, and there's a charity code to deal with, all right. Interaction between the management team and the board members are very key, right? And among the board members, how you work together in a harmonious way, very important. And that's why finding the right people to come in becomes critical. And that can mitigate all these questions about what is the risk of joining the charities board, right? And that requires a lot of interaction, communication. And I'm glad that we have many organizations looking forward to CNPL sharing later on how they help to find the right match, right? Now that's all I want to say, and I hope that with this sharing, and I encourage later on in our facilitation sessions, the panel ask questions, ask all the tough questions, right? And understand more about what auditors or accountants can do and how you leverage on our expertise, all right, to help you in this journey to improve your governance, your risk management practices, your internal control, all right, to do good for your beneficiaries. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tay. I think that we have all learned a lot from the sharing from our speakers. The sharing and learning does not stop here. So we'd like to invite our panelists on stage for panel discussion.
Now, the first area that, a key theme that I want to get the views of the panel is the role of the accountants in charities, right? And I just talk about auditors also, right? Yeah, role of auditors, roles of accountants in charities. And maybe we can start from people like Alfred, right? You deal with the auditors all the time, the accountants all the time. Share your feelings. Are we a pain to you?
I think basically for most auditors or accountants who help in the charity, they usually have the impression that it's going to be directly involving in areas such as finance and accounting. But I think over the years, I've really experienced a lot of them who really come with the heart in the right place to know that there are many other areas they can actually give their input as well. So beyond the fundamental areas such as accounting, finance, which is very basic, or can be very complex depending how big your charity or how small your charity is, I think many of them do bring in a lot of other areas of expertise because of the skill set that they have. And I think those areas are the ones that you all should be able to probably contribute and look out for to value add to the charity sector.
Okay, thank you. You're very nice to us. What about you, Celine? Yeah.
Oh, I have a very positive experience with accountants because I have someone who chairs our audit committee as well as the one who chairs our finance committee, and they're of immense help to us. And can I just say that the Code of Governance for Charities is almost like a gift because as a charity, we don't have very deep resources. This Code of Governance, if we were to take the spirit of it and its guidance, if you put it in place, you would end up with a very robust governance structure for your organization. And that's very reassuring because of the many stakeholders we have to deal with and the many risks that we have to deal with. And also because for our internal and external auditors, for example, we have Deloitte and Touche and we have KPMG. They are experienced because they understand our mission. They are of immense help to us in various areas beyond just accounting. They give advice on financial planning, strategic planning. So these are of very critical importance for us to grow as a charity, especially at SCC Hospice.
I would like to, Lillian to share. Lillian, I think you have been very involved in educating the charities on risk management, right? And from your experience dealing with the charities on risk management, what how do you see we as an accountant playing the role of enabler to enable those change to take place?
I think risk management in the sector is relatively new, and there isn't like a framework whereby everybody goes on the same kind of risk, identifying the risk and so on. So the accountants, having assisted many corporations in risk management, I think they are very skilled. They come with a lot of deep knowledge of how to look at risk. But having said that, I think risk is something that is very close at the ground. Who knows your risk better than yourselves? So you cannot expect the accountants to know all your risks. But there is a lot of opportunities for charities and the accountants to be working together. One, as charities, you know where your risks are. On the other hand, the accountants are able to guide you, facilitate you in coming out with a framework, in coming out with a nice chart to show where your risks are, where your key risks, your top risks. And then accountants are also very good in processes. So having looked at their risks, they are able then to navigate you to look at how your processes and how you can put in monitoring processes to manage your risk. So shared services for charities, we have actually worked with a few charities to help them with risk management. But being a charity ourselves, we are also very new to risk management. So we had a few partnerships with the accounting firms. And by the way, shared services for charities uses volunteers a lot in a great way. And there are partnerships with the accounting firms. So in those risk management, risk assessment, facilitation work that we did with charities, we actually partner with accounting firms. So we got the benefit of the expertise from the accounting firms, and they come out to be very, very useful.
Okay, Gerard, you are an auditor, was an auditor, accountant, right? Mr. Charity, many roles you play, right? How can we be of help to the charities?
No, I think typically the accountant is exposed to many, many industries and different projects. So it's that breadth of experience and encounters that enables them to be able to see things differently when they come to the organization. And they're always very good in connecting the dots. So this is where the accountants can be useful, but the stumbling block, because I've been on both sides, I'm also on various charities myself, is within the charities itself, we tend to be a bit defensive. So if someone comes in and says, oh my gosh, you mean all these years you never bothered about this, and become very defensive. I think it's very important that we accept it, that these are things that needs to be fixed and no need to be defensive upon it. And this applies also to audit. Very recently, less than 3 weeks ago, an organization that I'm involved with, of which I'm the chair, and it's quite funny, the auditors presented the findings, and some of my board members engaged into a big argument with auditors. No, it's not need for improvement, it is satisfactory. And it's all got to do with the ego, and then I have to say, look, let's face it, these are issues that we have, and I have to find a balance, because I don't want my board members also to feel, because I'm ex-auditor, I support the auditors, you know. But facts are facts, but it's very difficult, especially when your board members are also people of certain stature, and they find it very difficult to accept criticism. So when someone comes and criticizes, their egos are affected, and then they go into a denial sort of situation. I see a few heads nodding. Obviously, you encounter that within your own board. But it is the denial and the non-acceptance that you do have problems. And what we are seeking for is people to come and help us to recognize them, because they are coming from outside. They can see it more clearly than we ourselves who are so directly involved, and we don't see the woods for the trees.
Yeah, very good. Now, I'm going to point to one question, and this is coming from the floor, and I'm going to show this question. Let's see whether it will. Okay, the question is, with negative audit observations, can donors and grant makers recall back the donations? Yeah, correct, that's right. We got 3 votes for this, all right? Gerard, you want to?
I'm not sure. I'm not legally trained, so I'm not sure whether the law of contracts applies to this. Probably not. But purely from logic and out of goodwill, if a donor no longer is supportive and asks, no, I think I made a mistake. I don't believe in your project, and that 10,000 I gave to you last month, can I have it back? If I face that position, I'll probably say, okay, let's preserve the goodwill, take it back. But I'm not sure what's the legal standing, whether having given, they can't take it back. I'm not sure. That one you have to check with a lawyer. I'm not legally trained. Anyone here knows the position?
No, I don't know the position, but again, applying logic, if your donation is, let's say, a restricted donation, and I'm donating just for this program, and let's say something happens and that program is cancelled, done away with, then I think, yes, you have every right to ask back your donation. I mean, but legally, again, I'm in no position. I don't know whether there are any legal people around who can help us with this.
See, all accountants are like that, very careful. They won't want to venture into something that is new. But there's a related question on what is the difference between internal audit and external audit, right? And how to set up internal audit. Now, I will answer this quickly. External audit are people that express an opinion on your financial statements, and their opinion is made public, right? Okay. Internal audit are people that give you audit observations. Sometimes can be very harsh. Sometimes facts hurt, right? But these are internal. Their reports are not made public, okay? That's the whole intent of internal audit, to do your self-examination and work together. So when we talk about audit observation, we need to be very clear. As far as we know, if you are doing if you get an internal auditors to conduct an internal audit review, and there are many control improvements areas or lapses that needs to be fixed, right? Those are actually meant to be internal documentation for management to take action, right? They are not meant for public consumption, right? To strike a vote or no confidence on you. So I think here is where education is important. Before we pay money to get lawyers to come in and advise on this, I think you have to take a view that if this is internal audit and there are audit observations relating to lapses and improvement, let's look at how to fix those and make sure it doesn't happen again, all right? It's meant to be internal. I don't think you need to worry about, donors asking back the donations. Okay? Now I'm going to move on. Now I'm going to do a simple polling question, just to get you to interact more with us. And please continue to send more questions to us, all right? The first polling question: what accounting areas do your organization need help in? Please take the areas applicable. Okay, it looks like, if I look at this, all right, the top 3 areas where charities need a lot of help is in the area of internal audit, management of reserves and investments, and development of accounting procedures and policies, okay? Actually, in the development accounting procedures and policies, there are many resources out there that also give you templates, or accounting manuals or certain suggested processes. You don't need to actually incur costs to get this thing done. But if you do need to tailor-make, there is also grants available for you to tap on, right? In the area of internal audit, there are many accounting firms that provide these internal audit services, and it is good that you go out there to talk to the many accounting firms. And when we talk about many accounting firms, it's not just the Big Four or even RSM. There are many other very good internal audit firms, all right? They may not have all this international brand name, but they also do good work. Talk to them, and sometimes they may be better off in understanding and providing more personal attention because senior people are involved. So that's in the area of internal audit, right? Yeah. Huh?
Yeah, I'm quite surprised to see that cost accounting is not much higher. I think this is a very important area because it helps you to know what's the actual cost of providing services, including internal costs. It helps you to make decision whether should you not outsource the service or get service from outside rather than employ a full-time person. Or it can even be the other way around, to justify the employment of a full-time person that have multiple responsibility, and you allocate out the cost, and you say, oh, actually it's not so expensive to have this individual in-house because it's actually doing the job of 2.5 other individuals. You really need to know where your cost allocation is, and some things, by the time you work it out, you may decide that it's better that I don't continue with providing these services because it doesn't make sense and someone else is already providing that service. So do give some thought to it. Every organization actually knowing where your cost goes to and making sense of it is very important for your sustainability and continued growth.
I will just comment on the internal audit. I think I can understand why internal audit is needed because there is an external audit coming on the way, right? So, but I think the important thing about one key difference between internal audit and external audit is actually the role of the internal audit is not just in merely policing, but it's enabling, which means that I think ideally you should have a situation where the internal audit has a relationship going on with the stakeholders, the departmental heads or the staff. Because the whole idea of internal audit is to help to improve the process in time for the external audit to come and everything is in order, right? So I think one of the key things I can suggest is it's very difficult to get internal auditor, to have a full-time internal auditor. I think Trade Society were quite fortunate to be able to get one. So the relationship is very important because people are going to tell you a lot more things as an internal auditor, and they're more willing to accept the changes and the recommendation for the changes because they see you more as someone they can work with. Yeah. But the only thing I can suggest is for internal auditors, actually, through our experience, there are only few key areas that you just need to focus on. So if you're not in a position to get a very permanent internal audit process, maybe just focus on those few key areas. If you can get someone within your accounting department to help out, or someone within from a volunteer pro bono perspective to help out, and just focus on those key areas, that may at least for the time being temporarily be able to overcome most of the issues that you need to face with the external auditor when the main audit takes place.
I just want to add on to Gerard's comments about cost accounting as well. That's very important for charities because in the work that we do, it's got to do with the value that we deliver on each donor dollar. And because I've got several services, so I make sure I know how much each unit of service costs. And this allows me to engage very deeply with my donors and stakeholders to say, for this amount that you're donating, this is the value that our patients actually get.
I would like to add on both to Alfred and to Gerard. The point about internal audit, coming from SSC, I thought that I'm a very good internal auditor and I know what my processes are. My own internal controls must be very strong, you know. Until I started to say, hey, I need an independent eye. And we actually got our volunteers who came from the accounting firms. Every year, we do a couple of reviews, and to my surprise, they were able to find points for my improvement. So I think being involved in the processes yourself, somehow you have blind spots. You are in denial and you think that you're good until somebody independent looks at it. So yes, I agree with Alfred that the use of internal audit services are very, very useful, and accountants are generally very good in looking at that because processes are their strength. And to add on to Gerard, he was mentioning about cost accounting. I agree very much that this is an area that actually can be very, very useful to charities. In SSC itself, I actually did not so much, I mean, yes, cost accounting, but beyond cost accounting, we did analysis as well. So I think analysis would be very useful. Analysis of your various programs, which program is generating a lot of interest, which program is generating a lot of income flows, which one is where your costs are, and so on. And then you can make more better strategic decisions from there. And accountants have got very good skills set to help you with analysis.
Just to deviate a bit, where the accountants can also be very useful. Actually, it's worth all the organizations here to give some thoughts. I know it's the new area. I would urge all organizations to start collecting data of your work, your operations, your beneficiaries, the people you're trying to help, and then get expertise to come and make sense of the data, and therefore enabling you to fine-tune your services to where the real need really is. Just to manage data on a basis of body counts is not good enough. It's not good enough to know that last year you've given out financial assistance to 300 people, and this year you're going to give out to 400 people. You need to collect data. What sort of people are they? What's the demography? What's the background? And then target your assistance more pointedly to different groups of people so they can get the maximum benefit from it. This is a new area, especially for the charities, because I don't believe, I haven't encountered too many charities that have actually started collecting data of the people they are servicing and dealing with, let alone begin to analyze it and make sense out of it, and therefore to improve on your delivery of services.
Now, collecting data is important, and actually, a lot of people have this misnomer that data analytics is expensive. Actually, it's not. If you can collect the data, even your simple Excel spreadsheet can do the analysis. In fact, we are working with the Microsoft people to look at how to use existing Excel spreadsheet, teaching you the skills to use pivot table to do analytics. And you'll be surprised. One of the projects that we're involved in, we are just looking at consumables. Why gloves? Suddenly there's a surge in certain months, suddenly there's nothing, right? And then you find very interesting observations and interesting revelations that will surprise you that, even simple things, consumables like glove, a few cents, when they add up together, can be a lot, right? Even simple things like this can be abused, right? So very interesting observations when you're able to use data to your advantage. And we are not talking about expensive tool. We are talking about Excel spreadsheets, right? Now I'm going to move on. There are some very interesting questions coming from the floor. And one of this has to do with conflict of interest. And I'm going to show this question because there's a lot of interest. I got 11 votes here. All right, 11 votes here. Conflict of interest and related parties transactions. Properly reported, how can it be regulated? Wow. And then we have comments here. All RPT are raised to the board and must get board approval and rigorous quotations. Nevertheless, I have a policy of preferring now to have any RPTs. I mean, I think this comment is in response to this question, and I think what he meant is he has a policy to regulate RPT. But board members are the ones who have been reported with conflict of interest and benefiting from related party transactions. Okay. May I get Gerard to get your views on this?
Generally, most organizations will try to avoid, individuals try to avoid getting into a conflict of interest position. And I hope all of you annually do have these declarations on potential conflict of interest and also on related party transactions. But having said that, there are occasions where it is beneficial to the organizations to deal with a party that is related, because you get better services at better prices, or that party may be the only supplier of that particular product or service. It can happen that the one product that you really need, and there's only one supplier in Singapore that can easily have access to it, and unfortunately happens to be related to the board member. What do? Do you say, oh, stubbornly conflict of interest, so I don't have the product? It cannot be. So that's the reason why you say full disclosure, and the persons involved in it should recluse from the discussion and let the other board members have the facts and make the decision. So you cannot be something where you have exclusive, so just sort of forbid all conflict of interest transaction or related party transactions. Have a full transparency disclosure, and then where you have such instances, disclose it, recluse yourself, let the independent members of your board discuss it and make a decision.
No, I just want to clarify this. RPT are not evil. They are not things that are bad, all right? If you look at the government-linked companies, there are so many RPTs, okay? The key point about RPTs is you need to have a policy, you need to have disclosure, you need to have transparency, you need to have a system to track them so that people know that these IPTs or related party transactions are conducted arm's length, accepted market practices. So, you know, there's this misnomer here, IPTs are bad. Actually, no, right? I think you just need to know how to handle it, okay? Now, I'm going to move on and go to the sub-theme on challenges that charities face in engaging accountants, all right? And I would want to do the polling question first, right? Let's have the polling questions. Yeah. So fast.
I find a contradiction in this one. In the first question, you needed help to manage your reserves and all that, and here you got limited financial resources, so I'm not quite sure how to make sense of it. One hand you say I have no money, on the other hand I need help to manage my money, so I think 3 and 4 is addressed by what we've been talking about today, linking up with NVPC and ISCA CARES, where we will help to match accountants that have suitable knowledge, and also to help you in finding one to engage.
Now, this thing about limited financial resources, actually what we have been talking about is important. Having a budget, having cost accounting, having the data analytics. You see, all of us are filled with limited financial resources, limited time, right? So prioritizing how much you have on those critical areas become important. So I think managing the expectation and adjusting helps a lot in stretching that $1, right? Lilian?
Can I add to this? From my experience with volunteers, there are 2 challenges that I have faced very frequently, And one of it is the matching of the time. When I need you now, you are not available now, but you're available tomorrow. So how can I match that? I think that's one of the challenges we have on the ground. And yeah, it just slipped my mind. The other, it will come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about Alfred? Yeah.
I think the issue of limited financial resources, I suspect, is also a relative thing, because it's all in proportion to how much money you want to invest in your bookkeeping team and your financial team versus. And generally, I do agree that I think most of us in the charity sector would know that the amount of work, the voluminous amount of work, sometimes is quite disproportionate to the type of, let's say, relative to the businesses out there where the transaction volumes are lower, but the absolute amount higher. Whereas in the charity sectors, you got 5 cents, 10 cents, $1, 20 cents, $3. The volume is high, and because of that, the bookkeeping process is a lot more. So one way to overcome, I suspect, is just settle the lower end. Because for someone to pro bono and support the charity sector, I think the last thing he wants to do, especially if the person is a financial professional, is to get involved in the bookkeeping part of it. Yeah, so if you can settle the bookkeeping part of it, meaning that you can have at least a basic infrastructure, someone to take care of the bookkeeping part, then you get that pro bono services at a higher level, mid-high level, and I think that may help to overcome the issue a little bit. Yeah, so don't aim straight away to have a qualified accountant from the Big Four to come to be your finance manager. I think that may be a bit too unrealistic. So I think that's one way you can look at it.
I also sit on the management committee of a much smaller charity. For that charity, they did exactly what Alfred just said. They take care of the basic bookkeeping, and for the person to take care of their auditing issues and the other accounting issues, they actually got a volunteer who is the head of financial services from another larger charity. So that worked out very well as well.
Yeah, my thought came back. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is, very frequently when we have got volunteers coming in, I think some people find it very mafan, because I have to spend time with the volunteer. I have to explain to the volunteer what I require and so on. And a lot of us are so strapped with what we are doing, we don't have time. But what I want to encourage you is it is always worth to spend that time to explain to the volunteer what you need. And I've had a lot of accountants who have actually come in to SSC, and they had been very useful. Sometimes you spend as much as half a day to go through what you require. And then after that, the accountant can do the analysis and so on. So earlier, Gerard was mentioning about, you need to have your database and so on. But nobody can just come in and look at your database and know what to make sense out of it. You need to invest time to explain things to the volunteer and get them to be with you on the same page.
Now, I think Sulin has brought up something very interesting, shared resources, and it's something for the charities to consider, that if you are a few small charities, combine together, employ one accountant that can actually service 4 charities, then you share the cost. So I think these are possibilities that should be considered, all right, in bringing in professionals to help you in your budgeting, financial reporting, and the governance requirements, okay? Now, I'm going to move on to a hot question, right? And this has to do with how to convince management the importance of succession planning, especially when management has been serving for a long time and are aging. It has been brought up by the EXCO before, but no action. All right. And I have also a related question, 6 vote, all right? But it has to do with the governing instrument. Does the code of governance prevail over the charity governing instrument? Example, term limit of board members, which is not in the governing instrument, and the charity face difficulty in amending the instrument, right? I think they are related, right? So I just wanted
a view from Gerard?
I think there are different types of organizations. In the case of religious organizations, the founder, quite rightly, you cannot, after 10 years or whatever number of years, say thank you very much. He or she is the founder and is there. And that's the reason why the code actually does suggest that 1/3 of your board can stay on, and the others you should rotate. Why succession planning for different board members? Actually, it ties up with renewal of board. It's very important. The environment, the ecosystem around you is changing all the time, and your activities is changing all the time. So whilst for the last 10 years, you may not have engaged into any building works, and now you are going to go into building works, having extended, building a new wing, for example. Does any of your board member understand about the intricacies of building works, the type of contracts and all? It will be useful for you to find a board member that can come in and help you for the next 3 years for the life and duration of the project. It will be useful to have as a board member someone that is legally trained, that can look into all the different contracts for you as you engage architects, the construction companies and so forth. But after 3 years, then you have other needs. So this is where skills-based volunteers or picking board members with the necessary skill set is very important. And your organization will go through a journey. At different stages, it will have different needs. And therefore, you want to fill up those needs. It's okay if you have that 2 or 3 board members that remains there more for the for what they represent, especially if it is a church or a religious organization. The founder obviously will present that flavor. But those that have the same board members, there's no renewal, no succession, and it goes on and on and on, usually finds that they are left behind by the world, the change. Everyone is very comfortable with each other, and then they depends, of course you have volunteers at lower level coming in with the new knowledge, but the board becomes a stumbling block there because they don't understand all these things. And when people come out and suggest to them all these changes, they don't find a need for it because they're not in tune. They're already quite happy with the last few decades that they've been around running it. And it becomes more and more of a club, where they come and meet for a meeting and have their coffee and cakes, and that's about it. And leave very much a decision making to 2 or 3 people. That's not the way to go. Yeah.
Alfred, supposing you're faced with this situation, I'm not saying your organization is like that, I'm saying that supposing you're faced with this situation, how do you bring up this subject of succession planning?
I think one way to convince is to give a lot of charity awards for good governance. But anyway, I think it's not a very straightforward issue, of course, when you say about changing, because I think there are 2 areas I can highlight why some charities may find it difficult and challenging to keep changing. Of course, other than the fact that there are not enough good resources around, board members are very hard to find, good chairman is a rare gems, you don't get them a lot. I think these two areas are, one is in terms of culture and subculture. I think one of the challenges I can see a lot of people tend to see that if I don't change, I can maintain a subculture. But it's on the assumption that you assume that your culture and subculture is the best culture that has to be maintained and preserved forever and ever. So I think one way is to be able to manage that is to ensure that, which is my second point, that the professionalization of the staff is crucial. Because if the staff is professionalized, and over time, that provides a form of stability to the organization, which indirectly means that the culture or whatever subculture you want to preserve will be carried out and executed through the staff process. Then I think the easier part will then, of course, later on to convince the board that we can change, we can rotate it's not going to disrupt a lot. Because I think frequently, even among the staff, they will feel that too many changes can be very disruptive, because 3 years ago with this strategic planning, and 3 years later we got a brand new strategic planning because we have a brand new board member on board, right? So I think the issue, the keyword is really to find a way to stabilize the organization, to ensure that if truly there's an organization that feel that their culture or subculture is crucial for them to continue to do well in the society, then find a way to preserve it through a staff professionalization process. And in that process, then obviously the change of board will have a much lesser impact going forward.
Quickly want to jump in on this comment about strategic planning. In some of the much larger organizations I'm involved in, we do a strategic plan for 3 years, and we do review it every 3 years, but we do engage staff at different levels so they feel they are part of it and understand why or how the strategic plan is unfolding, and why the strategic plan at the end expiry of that 3 year for the next 3 years will be a bit different. So getting them to participate. But certainly, the reason why I'm joining is actually these plans all needs to be reviewed. And the frequency normally is 3 years. Yeah.
Now, the related question is about this instrument, and you know, how does the code of governance prevail over the charities governing instrument? Example, the term limit, and you know, if you are facing difficulties in amending the instrument, right? Sulin, you want to take this question? Whether the code of government prevail the charities governing instrument, right? The term limit of the board members, which is not in the governing instrument, and a charity faces difficulty in amending the instrument. How do you deal with this?
Wow, that's a difficult one. I suppose it's important for both the management team as well as the board to look through the code of governance and understand that it is a fundamentally robust instrument that will help the charity do better. So there is such, if that's the philosophy of how we would approach how the organization develops, then back end, the next natural step is to then amend our constitution. Yeah, but a lot of this requires much direct interaction between the management and the board, and a very deep understanding of where the organization wants to go as a whole.
Yeah, the governing instrument is decided internally by that group. It's not a legal thing that's going to bound you. So if there's difficulty in amending the governing instruments, it is because of the non-acceptance of the recommendations of the code. If they accept that the recommendation is good for them, then amending the constitution or that should not be the issue. It's only when non-acceptance, that means, no, I don't agree totally, then it's a problem to amend it.
Because amending it just means that you pass it through your sector administrator.
Yeah. Yeah, someone want to ask a question?
No, at AGM that you cannot get a quorum and you can't amend the constitution.
A quorum for amending of your constitution, what sort of...
Because it is a society, member-based.
Yeah.
So you need a quorum. Without a quorum, you can't amend, you can't touch your constitution.
I know, but you need a quorum in order to hold your AGM in the first place.
Not necessary.
Eh?
Not necessary. You can still go ahead and do your election without a quorum, but you need the quorum to amend the constitution. That's what's written in the constitution years ago.
Okay, I know what you mean. Now, I cannot make reference to Clang Association, but that we know in the Clang Association, they have 30, 40 members. And some of these are 70, 80 years old. They never attend meeting, right? And you will see over a period of time how they are changed, all right? Now, the answer to this is not fixing the quorum. The answer to this is personally talking to your members and persuading them to change. And this takes time. Unfortunately, you cannot force it through. You have to work, like my experience with the Clang Association, they work through, make sure everybody understands, make sure everybody is at ease with them resigning, stepping down.
And this one really takes time to get people to understand why we need to reconstitute the council or your board, all right?
So you have to explain that you
Yes.
are having problem getting a quorum to change the
Correct.
constitution.
So you won't go to jail, right? This is comply or explain. Remember,
Yeah.
this is principle-based. It's not a piece of the legislation, right? So all you need to do is to explain, all right? And maybe by explaining, it help people realize, hey, we should quickly have this, move on, right?
Yeah, because you'll make them stand out.
Yeah.
And
I think the problem is more complicated than that because I have actually retired from the organization. It is a member-based society, and you don't really know if the members are still around. Okay, but because the constitution say that it must be certain percentage of membership, and in your database is so many members, we had difficulty for years trying to get a quorum, and we have never been able to amend the constitution for what?
Okay, I'm going to take this offline because it's very specific.
Yeah.
Okay.
Related to this question, can I just ask? Actually, there was another question. How do you count the number of years? As long as it's a board member, or has to be specific position?
Or you
Board
mean the
member.
number of
As
years
long as
in terms
board
of
member.
no? It's board members.
Yeah.
No
Okay.
need specific position.
Kaka, you
Yeah, Kaka, you want to say yeah.
Just in response to the earlier question, okay, the society's rules allow that you can have a meeting by postponing it by half an hour. Then you can have an AGM or EGM, whatever it is, but you can't change the constitution, okay? So this creates a problem that the gentleman has raised. And like in the companies, if you have a lacuna, you can go to the court and say, we can't have a meeting at all, can you do something about it? The Societies Act don't have this. Maybe we should have this in the Societies Act.
Well,
Or
we
go
will take-
somewhere to say, get it changed. Because
Yeah.
you can't have a situation where nobody turns up to the meeting and you can't do anything and everything gets stuck, so to speak.
We'll take note and raise it with relevant authority because that's not under our ministry. Societies Act.
No, this is a very peculiar situation. We have seen this before. If you're interested, you can take it offline. You contact me. There are ways to deal with this, but it has nothing to do with governance practices. All right. Now I'm going to move
there
on to
you
the
are.
next.
There's always an accountant with a solution somewhere.
Yeah, I also face a similar situation, very similar. Right? We need to update the register of members. All right, so we can discuss separately. Discuss what steps can be taken to build good relationships between charities and the accountants. Suggest ways to build trust and understanding between charities and accountants. And I think this is important because we talk about accountants sometimes play the role of auditors, and we are not welcome. All right, and this is an area where both sides need to build trust together.
I think charities, we occupy a very special place. We do the work that is non-mainstream that current institutions or organizations don't want to provide. So the things that we do is actually, it leads in certain areas because these are things that the community needs and we strive to provide. So naturally, by doing something like this, there is a certain impetus, a certain passion, a certain sense of mission of what we want to do. And with all of this, it is critical that we share deeply with our volunteers, accountants or otherwise, what this mission and this vision and what we want to do. And most importantly, because as a charity, we really occupy a public space, and it is really up to the management team to be bravely able to identify the weaknesses that we have so that we can share this with our volunteers so that they can better help us. And this builds trust and authenticity in the relationship.
Okay, there's actually a specific question related to this. And this is coming from the floor. We are an IPC in the arts sector. Auditors are still using the commercial sector audit model on us. How to get them to understand our type of work that we do, right? Maybe bring them for more exhibition. I think I thought this is relevant, all right?
Yeah, I believe there are issues relating to this. And yeah. Lillian, what is your view? Please.
Yeah, I think not only that, there are a lot of areas where there are differences, and I think accountants, when you come to charities, you have to understand that things are done differently from your experience in the commercial sector. So knowledge of the charity accounting system is very important. So knowing the CAS and how you can help charities with the CAS, I think that is a definite must. And in fact, beyond the accounting system, I realized when I first joined the sector, I was asked questions that I didn't know, the answers I didn't understand. So things like people ask me, what's the 30% rule? I say, huh? And then, they have this foreign fundraising for foreign usage. What is this 2080 rule? And again, I scratched my head. So I think in the commercial and in the charities, there are differences. And for charities, if you want to make good use of the accountants, then I think you need to provide some basic information for them and for the accountants to be able to read up as well. So that is one advice I can give, I guess.
I think whatever the sector, be it arts or otherwise, probably 90% of it is standard processes and controls which can be easily audited. In the case of the arts, where I think there could be complications is where you have actually an item that needs to have a value placed on it. And how do you then value an item in the art world? And that's quite subjective. Who do you consult and how do you get that valuation? We've always encountered these sort of cases. I still remember a few years ago there was an incident that came out where someone wanted to donate a whole lot of paintings to the museum and decided it was supposed to be a certain value, and by the time they got around to getting some form of valuation, it's a totally different answer. Then the complications is what value do you put in the tax receipt and things like that. So there are those type of that 10% area for sector by sector that is special in its needs. But 90% of cases, when it comes to expenses, normal revenue and all that, it's all the same. It's the same audit procedure and processes. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone want to add any views on this, the art sector? Yeah.
I think just very quick, very quickly, I agree with Gerard that actually whether you're using CAS or FRS process, 90% of the processes, the structure, the regulatory issues are all the same. But I agree that the key difference is understanding the business. So whether you're even within the so-called VWS or SSOC sector, there are different types of charity, children, youth, and families, and elderly. They're also involving a lot of very intricate differences that you need to understand. So I think the best part is to, of course, maybe ensure that whoever is going to audit or perform accounting role in your organization understand the business and the background. And sometimes I also see that is a good, probably good areas where you can actually make changes if those issues really surface. The changes are necessary for the auditing process or the accounting process to be more effective. Yeah, so you may take the opportunity, you make use of it rather than to actually avoid it.
I just wanted to add on that accountants, from my observation, they are very resourceful. So I had one experience where we didn't know how to treat, I think, a donation, no, I think it was a valuing of an item that was in an auction. So how do you treat that? How do you account for that? How do you treat the tax and all that? And I had this accountant who was very good, He actually called the tax department for me, and he found out everything that I need to do for that. So that gave me the positive view of accountants, that they can be very resourceful if you are able to work with them together.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next section. and this has to do with this polling question. How does your charity attract, motivate, and retain your volunteer accountants? Please tick the areas applicable. All right. So a lot of you talk about volunteers' belief in our organization, mission, and vision, right? Lillian, you look at this survey, what is your views? How do we, retain volunteer accountants?
Yeah, I think coming out very strongly is volunteers' belief in our organization's mission and vision, and I think that is very true. I think the more you share with your volunteers, you are basically building trust with your volunteers. And I think volunteers like to feel that they are part of the organization as well. Being inclusive, I think that helps. One of the things that SSC did, and I think they're still doing now, is providing evaluation of what has been done. Initially, I was very afraid, you bring in a volunteer and you want to evaluate how the volunteer has performed. But to my surprise, it's actually very useful because that was a platform whereby the volunteer and the staff gets together and look at where the volunteer has done well, and that reinforces future works as well. Another area that SSC did on volunteerism was when you've got volunteers coming in and going out, they can continue to volunteer. But what about volunteers who are with you very long term? We had seen accountants who had left their jobs. They were in between jobs. They came into SSC as volunteers. And then 6 months, a year later, they are still without jobs. We came to some partnership with them to say, hey, how about you become our consultants? And then they get a small consultancy fee, and that works both ways. It was a win-win for both ways. So I guess, motivating volunteers really depends between your organization and the volunteer, but key to it is that the volunteer is part of your organization, and they believe in what you do.
I just want to add this associated point. Having a committed and passionate accountant on your team as a volunteer is a wonderful resource because by nature, my personal experience is that accountants tend to be very diligent and meticulous, and that serves the charities really well in terms of making sure that our processes financially are all ship-shape and up to speed.
I think the one thing to jump out quite clearly is 37.6% of them think that they don't engage volunteers. Actually, my suspicion is maybe it's the scope that you may have misjudged, because I think you don't have to get an accountant to do accounting work, which I mentioned earlier, right? Because there are so many other areas in the charity sector, the accountant with the background and training and the skill set can contribute. For example, data science, they're very analytical. You can look in the area, helping your fundraising department, helping your other departments. Then what about the areas of services, program evaluation, which is very quantitative, less qualitative increasingly, because when you want to measure success of a program outcome, you go through an evaluation process. You need someone who can quantitatively analyze. And some of the finance trained person, they may actually be quite good in that. And the truth is actually a lot of the people I do come across who are in the financial sector, generally in the sense that if I really do a 9 to 5 job in accounting, why would I want to do another accounting job after 9, right? After 5, right? So if you give them other scope which they can use as skill, I think increasingly you can actually engage more accountants. Then one day, if they are tired of that, they can go back to become your treasurer, which is not a bad idea, right? Yeah.
I think two points I want to make. One I've mentioned many times before. people don't support organizations, people support causes. So coming back to earlier speakers, you must articulate what you stand for. And so whether it's accountant or whoever it is, some are inclined to work for organizations that caters to children, some to elderly, some to the sick and dying and so forth. They're attracted by different causes. The other thing is when you work with an accountant, in particular one who is a member of the institute, one of our 32,000 members, they are subject to our rules of ethics and disciplinary action. So if this person does something that is conduct unbecoming of a professional or do something wrong, that is recourse. So they are always, why they are very careful and diligent is because they are subjected to our rules. And if they don't do a proper job and complain that they have been unprofessional, the institute will conduct investigation as to whether they are professionally guilty or not, and disciplinary action will be meted out.
Gerard just bring up a very critical point, and I'm going to ask for the last polling questions. For accountants who have volunteered their services in your charities, are they concerned with professional liability and indemnity issues? If so, what can be done to address this? Right. Just now in my speech, I also talk about this professional indemnity and the need to have dialogue between the accountants and the charities. And let's look at what the survey say. Charities need indemnity and safety nets for volunteer accountants. 40% of you agree.
I think I have such an idealistic view of this. Because I feel that in the true spirit of volunteerism, you give of yourself and of your skills. And for the charity, in the true spirit of wanting to do well for your beneficiaries, you would do your best to put in the appropriate policies and procedures. And from there, both parties engage and journey together to build on the organizational strengths for the charity and to encourage the depth of intervention from the side of the volunteer.
Okay. I have an associated questions on this from the floor. How do you encourage accountants to volunteer in less sexy areas such as arts and sport charities? I thought they are quite sexy.
No, it comes back to interest, and even in arts or sports, there are arts organizations, there are sports organizations that differ tremendously in how they are managed, what they stand for. Just now you heard Kong Ying Tong. I think he's on Sports SG also. So there are accountants interested in sports who would want to be involved, but again, it comes back to it, especially for younger accountants. If your organizations, if there are rumors your organization is not well managed and all that, the younger accountants, while building up the career, say, I don't need to take this risk. As I'm building up my career, I get involved in this organization, and if something happens, then I get dragged into it. It's probably easier if there is a tidying up job, cleaning up job to get an older accountant who's already retired like myself. It really doesn't matter, if we'll do our best to help the organization, but whether we're still a member of an institute, not a member of an institute, is no longer relevant because we don't work for a living anymore. So it's probably easier to convince one of us older ones to come in and take the risk and journey with you to do the cleanup and rebuilding. But certainly if your organization, if there's any rumors about it, younger accountants will not take the risk. Why? Why take the risk? They're building up their career and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, Lilian?
From my experience with SSC, I think this is a real issue with the accountants. Many of my volunteers, when we talk to them, yes, professional indemnity is very important to them because they are giving professional advice to the charities. So what we do is we always tell the accountants that they do not assume personal liability. If anything goes wrong, it is SSC who gets sued and not the individual accountant who gets sued. So that helps a little bit. Yeah, but I guess personal, yeah, as Gerard was mentioning, personal reputation does matter as well, lah. So I guess you need to have built-in processes of good controls to protect your volunteers as well, so that they will not be implicated when in fact, nothing should go wrong to start with, so they won't be implicated.
I think the key here is dialogue, communication, how to make sure that your board members, it's not just the accountants and the management have continuous dialogue, okay, to deal with matters like this. If you don't talk about this professional indemnity, talk about reputation, how to mitigate this reputation risk, you're not going to get not just professional accountants, professional lawyers, professional doctors to come in, right? So dialogue is important, and we got to be courageous to bring this issue on the table and discuss about it, all right? And once you have this dialogue, like what SSI has done, you realize that many accountants have signed up as volunteers to do your risk management workshop, right? Yeah. So I was very encouraged by this, right? And thanks to what Lillian has done to reach out to the accountants to answer those questions, right? Now there are some questions coming in which I think we should air their views, all right, and have it answered. One of them is, for cost-benefit analysis, how can we quantify the value of contribution made by VWOs? For cost-benefit analysis, how can we quantify the value of contribution made by VWOs? Wow, tough.
I think there's a little bit of mixed up in two related topics. The value of VWO must be on measurement or determining of the outcome of your program itself. What is the outcome? Ultimately, it's a higher level. The outcome is the social impact itself. So are you achieving the right outcomes and not just throughput in terms of body counts? Cost benefit is basically is for the services that you are providing. Should you be doing it yourself, or should you buy services externally or outsource it, or whatever it is? There's a cost to it. But interrelated, assuming you have good outcomes, you still can look at the cost one, is that are you the best organization or best people to be providing this service, or should it be someone else? Is there someone else that can do it with the same outcome but at a much lower cost? So it is interrelated, it's complex, but first and foremost, the most important thing and my greatest wish is all VWOs will move towards outcome measurement, because only that is relevant, is outcome measurement.
I see not coming from Alfred and Suling.
Yeah, I think I fully endorse that. I think the important part to understand is Singapore social service or charity landscape is very different from some of the other countries neighboring, where you can almost instantly resolve some problem by just putting some money to build something or to feed some mouth. But I think the landscape in Singapore is more complex than that. And because of that, you find that a lot of the heavier cost components are skewed towards manpower. I've seen people like Corinne, all those who are in the social work department, they train a lot of young social workers, and these are the people out there who's going to help solve a lot of these emotional, social problems, which cannot be resolved by money alone. So to measure the cost effectiveness, you obviously have to use that as a start point. How do you find the outcome, short-term, mid-term, long-term? So I think we need to, I agree that we don't have the total answer, but we need to maybe develop some more sciences to understand that clearly. But what is important is that is probably going to be a very key point. If you are going to compare how Singapore measure our cost effectiveness in social service versus, say, measuring cost effectiveness in Indonesia or India or somewhere else, it can be quite differently viewed at. So I think we just need to be very aware that how we measure here really have to focus a lot on how effective the manpower input, the skill used, the counseling process, the casework process, the intervention process, therapy process. Yeah.
Okay, I have one last question here, which I think we should answer this, is money laundering risk, okay? How does one determine that an anonymous donation is money laundering? Write up, define application on use of money, not source. If not sure, do not even encash money as solution. Is this the way to handle? And how to answer the donors, right? Money laundering is... Now, I'm not sure when you say anonymous means what. Someone put outside your charity door $1 million of cash. That's anonymous. Or someone actually is a Tai Long, give you the 1 million and say, don't publish my name.
I will quickly jump into this. Money laundering actually involves a throughput process where the money is converted from being dirty or illegal to being beneficiary. So if it's a single flow, in my opinion, if it's a single flow and they give you the money and it's yours to keep, there's no arrangement or whatever for you to give back something in return, I'm less worried. Then it becomes one of conscience and your personal value. Do you want to ask more questions that if you know this money comes from a source where the earnings is something that you do not support, maybe come from some big time gangster that runs a chain of brothels and they decided for his karma, he decided to give you a big donation, should you accept it or not? This is a separate matter, but assuming you're not disturbed by such things, just thank you very much. God works in mysterious ways. Is money laundering in a different way, money from a questionable source, but now you're making the money into serving God's needs, doing good things, so you're laundering it in a different way. But money laundering, as we speak about, is where you be very careful if someone comes in and do a special deal. For example, someone you don't know is, I'm going to give you $10 million, but you cannot keep the whole lot, of which 5 million has to go to XYZ, 2 million to the, then you begin to ask questions. If you're not sure, please contact the charities unit. We'll help you to check the background of it.
Yeah, this gentleman has something to...
Sorry, going back to the previous question about value of VWO, I'm actually Casey from Circle of Friends, the Vice President. We actually engaged conjunct consultant, volunteer. They actually did a study with us. I'm sure you all know what's ROI. They actually did a SROI, which is social return of investment. We deal with youth at risk. So they actually study number of youth that is out of prison, the benefit that the society gains, which is if he goes in prison, there's lawyer costs, there is police costs, there's prison costs. So that cost, they did an estimate, added up together, and if that same youth is positively engaged and fully employed, his pay again is added into that. So each youth that stayed out of prison actually had a value that they can actually evaluate. This is, of course, estimate and is mainly used to attract investors and, sorry, not investors, I should say donors and fundraisers. But that is one form of value that you can put to a VWO. Yeah. And we are very share this program is actually on a spreadsheet and software to any other charity organization that wants to use it.
Yeah, that's what we refer to as the cost of not doing something. But within it, I will still stress on the outcome. You may know the cost, but the question is, out of the 100 youth, when you monitor in terms of recidivism rate, what does it indicate, and how long do they keep clean for 3 years, and beyond 3 years, then what, that's the outcome. But certainly the figures that you calculate is a convincing one to get ministry and all that to give some funding and say, look, if we don't run this program, then this is what it's going to cost the nation in terms of reformatory and all these sort of things. But the first question that will come up, so how successful are you? What is the outcome that you're achieving? So the two is always interrelated. Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to close this panel discussion because I want you all to
listen to CNPL what they are doing to find you the board match. And before I close, I'd like to have my panel, each one of them, say something about what is useful to all of you when you engage your accountant. Starting with Gerard.
I think get your house in order in the sense that if you want to attract volunteers, accountant or otherwise, they must be convinced that you are very sincere in tackling whatever issues that you have and not just lip service, because accountants can be quite risk adverse. If they are not convinced you are sincere in it, they don't want to be involved. They got enough things to do.
I think if you want to have your accountant stay with you for a long time, I think if you give them jobs in bite sizes, that would help them. So if you are going to plan like 6 months, 1 year ahead, give them like a kind of schedule, you know, that they can move towards. And yeah, and I echo very much what Gerard was saying. They have to believe in what your organization is doing.
I think I know there are quite a lot of accountants and financial professionals here. I think what I can encourage all of you is you have hard skill, you have soft skill, right? I think the hard skill part is quite clear. We know what you can do, but it's really the soft skill part. If you combine them together, they would be very useful to a lot of charities, because your soft skill can go beyond bookkeeping and accounting. You can contribute a lot and value add a lot to how a charity can even run more effectively. So maybe you'd like to seriously consider some other areas beyond just what you are capable of doing in your current functional role in your organization now. And that may be one good step to start with.
My comment would be for the charities. I would encourage all of us to be unflinchingly outcome focused. Because yes, you have lots of passion, we can put in lots of effort, we can call on a lot of volunteers, but really what is the outcome of all this effort you put in? And that's fundamental to being relevant to the community that we want to serve and relevant to the volunteers that we want to attract. So always start with knowing what the outcomes are, how we can measure it, and what that value is to our beneficiaries.
Sorry, there's one more question.
So Lynn sums up very well, and I'd like to thank the panel here for being so candid and so sincere in their comments and views. Right? Can we give them a round?
I'm actually an accountant, and I sit in boards of a few charity organizations for many, many years. And I'd just like to share my experience both from an accountant perspective as well as from a perspective of a charity organizations, being a treasurer or finance-related roles that I played in the charities. As an accountant, I find that it is, personally and professionally, I find that it is very fulfilling to actually contribute to charity organization, because I feel that a lot of the charity works that they have done, it actually gives me a sense of belonging. That when I contribute to the VWOs, okay, I feel that I'm actually contributing something towards a good cause to the society, and therefore I have a greater sense of belonging to the place that I belong to. And that to me means a lot. Okay, but at the same time, for accountants who wanted to actually volunteers, okay, my suggestions is this: number one, you need to have a lot of commitment. You need to be committed to it, because the meetings are not just, weekend or at nights. Okay, it can be during sometimes work hours as well. So commitment is extremely important. Second, when you contribute with nothing attached. Do not ask for returns. Because I know, people's always, there is a give and take. But in this case here, if you really want to contribute, it's just contribute wholeheartedly. and don't just ask for it, don't ask for returns. That to me is, my experience from an accountant contributing to VWOs. From a VWO's perspective, I feel that one of the problems that VWO face and is trying to look for accountants. A good example, and I think many people in these rooms will probably experience that examples, looking for auditors. When a VWO wants to engage an auditors, and in our experience, when we call for quotations for annual audits, we invited the Big Fours, we invited the mid-sized firms and SMEs, the SMPs. A lot of time, Big Fours doesn't want to even quote. When we approach the smaller firms or the mid-sized firms, a lot of them rejected upfront. Why? They say that, because if I do audit for an auditors, I'm subject to myself to inspections by the authority. So, we have problems trying. Even though, the VWOs that we contribute, that I actually sits in, is actually a big size VWOs. We have got the full range of all the governance and everything. And, accounting firms also goes to do CSR. And yet, this is the kind of experience that we have. The other thing is, when we try to invite accountants to come on board, yes, vision, mission's important. But accountants being accountants, the way they are trained, first questions. So what is the risk? What is the exposure to me? Do you have professional indemnity, which is why the poll was there. Okay, and it certainly does not help that, you see a lot of case brought up to court where, accountants are also being sued. The treasurers of the VWOs being brought to court. So, the accountants are very skeptical. That's why, it being developed into professional skepticism. So, that's the challenge that the VWO face. Trying to recruit accountants. Yes, accountants has got skill sets, good skill set, which I can attest to that because that is my profession, that is my experience. So, that's my comments. Thank you.
The quick comments, doesn't matter whether you have good accountants that are volunteers, that have set up the system, monitor the system. Any auditor that comes in, that conducts an audit, charity or otherwise, and charities are considered as public interest entities. So their working papers are subjected to practice monitoring and must comply with the international auditing standards, which means the days of being able to do an audit for a charity at $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 is out of the window. So it's a question of whether the charity is willing to pay the fair audit fee in order to get someone willing to do the audit. Because today, just typing out the reports and all that is going to use up all that cost already. So I think, to be fair to the auditors, there is still a mismatch in terms of what charities are willing to pay in terms of audit fee and what rightfully the auditor is willing to accept, albeit even at a discounted rate. But it cannot be so low like in the old days of as recent as 5-6 years ago. 5-6 years ago, it's still possible to get an auditor coming for a small charity. Okay, I'll do it for $800, $1,000. But today, it's out the question. No auditor would, I won't say no, there are probably one or two still willing to do it, but very difficult to find. I mean, basically, the audit, what you're asking the auditor to do is bear the cost of doing the audit. If they're going to pay only the sort of audit fees. So that's where your challenge is. So I always say pay the auditors a fair fee. And if the auditors over time is convinced of your mission, of the work you do, let him have a chance to donate it back and enjoy 2.5 times tax deduction. And that is a win-win situation for both. So at the end, minus, you still come back to quite an affordable sum for the charities.
There are a few accounting partners, audit partners here from various accounting firms. They definitely will be interested to talk to you. Just come and look for me. I will introduce you. All right? Okay. And then the second thing, which I said just now in my speech, is very important, and we know it for a fact that accountants, all right, needs to learn about charity. Charities need to have patience with the accountants to get us to understand, all right, what you are doing, how is it different. Dialogue is very important, right? So with this, thank you very much for your active participation. Thank you.
We will now like to invite Ms. Winifred Lowe, Director of the Center for Nonprofit Leadership, for a sharing session. Ms. Lowe, please.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a real pleasure to be here to address so many of you. And I don't think I've had the honor of standing in front of so many accountants or accounting partners. And of course, in my role so far in Center for Nonprofit Leadership, I've had the privilege of engaging with many nonprofit leaders. So, yeah, I'm going to introduce to you a little bit more about how we can facilitate the matching process. So the gentleman over there who shared his experience, thank you. It wasn't planned. We didn't pakat, right? But actually, exactly that's what we do, is to try and create more positive leadership volunteering experiences for you, so that those with the skills, the supply side, can be matched with the demand side. So let me quickly introduce to you how CNPL fits in the larger ecosystem. Yeah, and many of you know that NVPC, which is a National Volunteer and Philanthropy Center, works very closely with the Charities Council. In fact, our approach could not be more similar. Together, for the Charities Council, together we develop a well-governed and thriving charity sector. For NVPC, together we will build a city of good. So as what the gentleman said, you know, being involved in your leadership voluntary capacity makes you feel like you belong, that you contribute, and that this is the place you want to be, and for yourself as well as for future generations. So CNPL is really the leadership consulting arm of NVPC. And so what do we do? Okay, but let's start by setting the context where NVPC focuses on the skills-based volunteering. Yeah, and in general, 1 in 3 people, based on the research that NVPC has conducted over the years, is that 1 in 3 people would like to volunteer using their skills. Yeah, and so, but that's so broad. So in NVPC's work, we classify them under general skills, skills-based, and leadership volunteering. So when we look at skills-based, there are different ways of giving, all right? So we break it down a little bit more, all right? So many people look at hands-on or manual volunteering. All that is important, but for those with specific professional skills, you can also volunteer in different ways. And as some of the speakers have also mentioned earlier, there are pro bono services. For sure, you know, the accountants among us in this room would fall in that category. So that's another area. But beyond that, there are board services, as you can see. Yeah, that's in the circle over there. Not every professional knows that they actually can sit on a board and not really just have to apply or use their professional skills just for that particular role in a charity. As I think Alfred and Shu Ling has said, that really there are many other opportunities for them to apply their professional skills. And serving on the board definitely is one of them. And so this is where CNPL comes into the picture. CNPL, as I mentioned earlier, is really the leadership consulting arm. And so our mission is to advocate for planned leadership and to nurture leadership capability in the nonprofit sector for all of Singapore. So planned so that it is not, disruptive for the board or for the staff. And most importantly, not disruptive for your beneficiaries. Yeah? So that's what we do, is to help boards and the executive team figure out how to do succession planning, strategic planning, and so forth. So our vision, therefore, is to transform the non-profit sector through effective, committed, and passionate leaders. I think passion is often a word used in the non-profit sector, but it's not enough. Okay, so our role is to also ensure that they are clear, especially board leaders, are clear what they can do to be more effective. Yeah, what we do is to try and match those with those professional skills with the supply side. Okay, so what's our work all about really, as an intermediary to support the non-profit sector, is we cover the full spectrum, yeah, of services to support non-profit leaders. Some of you are familiar faces. I can see now that I'm facing you, so it's very good to see. Some of you are already users of our board match service, yeah, and which is really a headhunter for board members. So I won't go too much about that here, but there will be a few slides subsequently. But we also have a new solution, which I'll talk about briefly, where some of what we discussed earlier to do with accounting skills can come in, and that's what we call expert match. Yeah. The next area has to do with development, especially for boards. In the past, we've focused very much on development for staff, all right, for EDs and CEOs, and that's the leadership competency model we call COMPASS. Actually, it means competency and passion together, all right? So that's why it's a COMPASS. So watch this space. What we are developing in the coming months is a COMPASS for boards, okay? So that people who sit on boards sometimes find it a little bit scary to step up to be a chair. So how do you identify what it takes to be an effective chair? All right, and so what are the skills, experiences you need? So we will be rolling out this program by next year. And of course, we have our pulse check process, which is really about board self-assessment. And I think Woon Taek has spoken about it in his sharing earlier, to do with evaluation, doing a stock check about how the board's performance is going. So overall, that's what we do with CNPL. But for the sourcing part, which is really to do with matching supply and demand, let me just share with you a little bit more about how this process happens. So as I mentioned, Board Match has been our signature program since 2009, when we first started. In the last year or two, we've actually introduced Expert Match, precisely because there are many professionals out there who can and want to volunteer, but may not be ready to sit on a board position. They are also, perhaps time challenged. As we all know, sitting on the board takes a lot of commitment, but their skills are entirely relevant. And so for us, when we say expert match under the purview of CNPL, the expertise is related to leadership in that domain area. So it has to do with strategy, talent management, leadership development, strategy, systems and operations. Yeah? But for all the related functional skills, you can still go to giving.sg as well as a means to register your interest in volunteering, okay, in different areas, not necessarily just in accounting. Obviously, you have ISCA Cares for those of you who want to volunteer in your accounting capacity. But as you can see, in the board match areas, there are many various functions that board members may bring and that boards, charity boards are looking for. All right, so finance is usually one of the top areas, and of course fundraising. So many of you in this room would have those skills that you can bring onto boards. So if you are not already a registered board match volunteer, please, my colleagues and myself are here. The rest of lunch and during the networking session, do check us out and find out how you can register for yourself, either as a charity or as a potential volunteer. Yeah? And as I mentioned, the expert match is really more project-based, short-term, all right, so that you can also get to know, both parties can get to know each other from the volunteer side as well as from the charity side before you commit to being on a board committee or on a board. That would be the best way for you to get involved in a charity. So I know I only have a very limited time, so I won't go through all the detailed processes, but there's more information at the booth outside. But what I would like to actually share is this slide that I think some of the contributions, either from the panel or from the questions from the floor, actually relate to. And this is something that over the years we found very important in identifying the right person for the right role, okay? Because it's all about chemistry. At the end of the day, there are 5 C's. That's what we look for when we facilitate a good match. Yeah, and the C's are to do with the cause. That's the first, as we said. That, so it's not just a job. Yeah, because when you volunteer, you don't get paid. So actually, what cause you believe in is the first and most important thing. Because you will probably go the extra mile to do work that you could get paid for in your professional capacity, but you would willingly do it. All right? So then your competency, obviously, you need to know how to go about doing things, your contribution, okay, the type of volunteer role you want to undertake. As I think Alfred said, you know, some people already do something for a living on a day job. When they volunteer, that's exactly what they don't want to do. All right, so that they have a more balanced life. Yeah, so we have to figure out what is it that they want to contribute, and the commitment, as we said earlier, and how you collaborate. And this is where the soft skills come in. You know, sometimes the hard skills are very important. The competency is there, but where things break down, wherever CNPL gets called upon to help boards, usually is the last C, is the collaboration, where things don't work out so well. And at the end of the day, it is about chemistry. So like in any headhunting situation, we bring both parties together, and both parties have to say yes. Yeah? So the rest, I don't think I will speak to it so much, but you can actually have a look at our website and any of our other resources. But rest assured that we've been in this business for quite a while now and have been working closely with, to me, the arts and the sports are the sexy sectors. Yeah. Even though we have already been involved with social and health for many, many years. That's the largest part of our pie. So I think I'll leave you with a few quotes for you to read from our, sorry, bad timing. Okay. That's about it for, oh my goodness, I'm all choked up. Thank you very much, I think, at this point in time, for allowing me an opportunity to introduce you to CNPL. But please come and chat with us if you'd like to know more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Low. Now it gives me great pleasure to pass the time to Dr. Ian Selby for the closing address. Dr. Selby, please.
Good afternoon. I've been sitting there and suddenly it came to me, and it kind of shows how fast this morning has gone. I've personally found it very interesting and very stimulating. I'd like to thank everybody who's contributed today, but I'd also like to thank everybody who works in the social services sector, and I think you deserve a round of applause for everything you do. Coming from the UK, I work with a children's charity that helps young children who are carers for their parents. So I have an insight to some of the work that you do. It's a very worthy and gratifying thing that you do. I think it's been a great turnout today. I think it's been a really stimulating discussion, especially with the panel. And I'd like to thank the panel for their insights. Looking at the polling session as well, we don't do that often enough in the UK. When we have an event like this, we're not as adept with the technology. So it was good to see, A, the technology worked, and B, that it was so interactive. Financial accountability is a key component for many charities, and I hope that the various speakers today have helped you understand how we as accountants can help you do your work. I'd like to thank, I'm getting actually with the water as well. Do you have some water? It's obviously the lighting up here. I'd like to thank Mr. Konyin too, and his role this morning. Thanks. We had the lack of air conditioning at the start, and now we've got the heat of the lights. Right, start again. I'd like to thank Mr. Konyin To for sharing his role with the accountants this morning, and Mr. Tay Won Tek for sharing about the situation of volunteer accountants in Singapore, and Miss Melissa Kui, who I talked with this morning, for discussing skills-based volunteering. I believe that the panel conversation was a good platform for the planners to share their experiences with you as charities and to raise concerns and feedback. We weren't able, I suspect, to answer all of the questions that came up, but it was quite stimulating to see some of the questions that did come up. So, after today's town hall meeting, we've gained a clearer understanding of the challenges faced by organisations to engage the professional accounting services, and some ideas were raised on how to overcome these. We discussed the current relationship between accountants and charities in Singapore, and to keep accounting for good sustainable, it's essential that we bridge the gap by fostering understanding between the two sectors. I think it's important to emphasise as CIMA and as the new association that good accounting practices and best practice can help everybody do their jobs better. As I say this, my voice is giving up again. Today's meeting has been recorded, which is a good thing, and we'll be able to share that in a few weeks. I should also point out that CIMA has been instrumental in trying to fund the research, and that we've got a few initiatives coming up with further work with many of the participants here today. So we've got a new leadership book coming out and a handbook to inform charities and accountants on the issues that they face in the not-profit sector. One thing I would say is, in the booklet, I'm the only person not smiling. I would say that it was a bad day when I had the photograph taken. So don't let that put you off coming and speaking to me after this event. I don't bite. And I'd be happy to talk about the research we funded and further research that's underway. So with no more ado, thank you very much for coming.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jia Ye, and I'm representing the COPAS team. So COPAS is actually a new initiative by the Now Smart Nation and Digital Government Group and GovTech. So with COPAS, right, you'll be able to. So what COPAS does, right, is that it's a new initiative, and then it replaces SingPass and Easy as the mode of login for transactions with the government. So before I go into detail on what COPAS is, may I have a show of hands who have heard of COPAS here? Wow, okay, that's a great response. Okay, who here has a CorpPass account now. Wow, okay, that's almost half of it. Right, that's great. So for the benefit of those who have not heard of CorpPass, CorpPass is basically replacing SingPass and Easy, and will be the required login method for business transactions with the government by end of 2017. Right, so what CorpPass does, right? Okay, let's say you're transacting with a charity portal, with MCCY's charity portal today. If you log in using CorpPass, the charity portal will be able to identify you as the user who is transacting for a specific entity, right? And for certain digital services such as CPF e-submission or let's say SSG's Skills Future, for example, some roles are required, and then you will be able to set this up on CorpPass itself. So there are 3 key steps to set up CorpPass. Firstly, you have to know whether your entity is eligible. Secondly, identify your CorpPass role. And lastly, you can go online to set up CorpPass. So, first step, how do you know whether your entity is eligible? If you are a SingPass holder representing a local entity with a unique entity number, you will be able to register for CorpPass today, right? If you do not have a SingPass or are representing a foreign entity, you will be eligible for CorpPass in 2018. And if you do not have a UEN, we would encourage you to register for one so that you'll be eligible for CorpPass. So second step, what is a CorpPass role and what is your role, right? So there are 3 key roles: register officer, CorpPass admin, and CorpPass user. So a register officer is basically the person who is registered with the UEN. So, for example, if you are a charity organization, the registered officer would likely be the governing board member for the charity. Do note that a registered officer does not have a CorpPass account unless he or she chooses to register for one. So the registered officer will actually choose a CorpPass admin who will then initiate the registration process online. So the CorpPass admin actually help to manage the entity's CorpPass, and do note that there is a maximum of 2 CorpPass admin per entity. So the CorpPass admin can also create CorpPass user accounts for some of the other staff members within the entity. And do also note that both the CorpPass admin and the CorpPass user are able to transact on CorpPass. Right. So you can create accounts. So broadly speaking, we've identified 2 key types of entity. The one you see on the left is a one-man shop. So, and the one on the right is a complex entity with multiple users. So for one-man shop, right, the registered officer might choose to become the CorpPass admin. And to do so is a very simple one-step process whereby you can just register for CorpPass online and you'll be able to transact immediately with CorpPass account. For more complex entities, the RO might not want to be the CorpPass admin and to be the one managing CorpPass, right? To do so, they can actually nominate someone to be the CorpPass admin. And all the CorpPass admin has to do is they can register online and then they wait for the RO to approve their registration. This can be done online or there's an offline process for it as well. So the CorpPass admin, once the account is approved, the CorpPass admin can create user account for other staff members, select digital services which their entity will be transacting on, and then assign these digital services to their users, right? So, we shall do a quick demonstration on how you can register for an account. Okay, so this is the CorpPass website, right? So as you can see, there is a very prominent button, register as a CorpPass admin. So you can click on it. You'll be required to key in your SingPass details for authentication purposes. Okay, as usual, SingPass has this 2FA which you have to. So with the 6-digit OTP, submit, Okay. So now you are at this page. So let's say today I'm the register officer and I want to register for a CorpPass account for myself. So under this field, the UEN field, when I click on it, I should see a list of entities that are registered under my name, right? So let's say I go ahead with the first one. I click on it. So this will be the UEN which I'm registering the CorpPass account for. So I can key in the relevant details, my email, etc. And then the CorpPass ID is basically the username which you will be accessing CorpPass using. So do note that no special characters are allowed. And then for password, there's the usual requirements. So if today I'm not the RO, right? I'm the CorpPass admin that was nominated by an RO. So I will have to key in this UEN field manually, the UEN number. And then as usual, I need to key in the information, etc. So you actually see an extra field here to tell you that you have to get your RO to approve your account. So there are two methods, as I mentioned previously, the online approval and the letter of authorization. For letter of authorization, you can download a template over there, and then you can upload this completed letter template along with the registered officer's identity documents, such as your NRIC, your IC, and your passport, right? So you can upload the file, and then you can submit. So before you submit, you can also see this area whereby there's a checkbox here. So what this checkbox means that if it's ticked, it allows you to access the digital services on CorpPass by default, right? So if you go with the online approval, you are supposed to key in the registered officer's last 5 digits of their NRIC and also the email address which CorpPass will trigger an email notification to. So let's say I'm still the RO and I go with the RO application. So, okay, he already has an existing account. So let's say if the RO does not have an existing account, right? Once you click next, you will be able, you will see a confirmation page. And basically what this confirmation page means is that you have successfully registered for an account. And then if you're the RO, you can transact with a CorpPass account immediately. But if you are the CorpPass admin, you're not the RO, it means that you have to wait for your registered officer to approve your account. Yeah. So that's basically it. So, okay, so last slide. Okay, if you require additional help, we have lots of online materials available, such as user guides, video guides, and FAQs. If you require further assistance, do approach our help desk. You can call our number or drop us an email. And if you require in-person help, you can always drop us an email to register for an appointment with the business center. And with that, I thank you so much for your time. We actually have a booth outside. If you have further questions or anything you would like to know, you can always approach us at the booth. Thank you so much.
So, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, we hope today's event has been a learning experience for everyone, and we hope to continue to having such town hall meetings and conferences in the future.